Americans have a level playing field in trading cutting-edge products and service such as videos, music, ebooks, and software. These comprehensive provisions meet the gold standard of digital trade rules that was set in the landmark USMCA. And again, we hope that's going to get voted on. We hope that Nancy Pelosi gets it voted on because everyone wants it, and she'll have to make her own decision. Let her make her own decision. But I can tell you the American public is tired of do nothing. And we are doing a lot, and the Democrats are doing nothing. Thriving commerce between the United States and Japan is essential to advancing opportunity and prosperity for our people. The United States and Japan are the world's largest and third largest economies. Together, our nations comprise nearly 1/3 of the entire globe's GDP. Japan is America's third largest agricultural export market, and this makes it even bigger. And America is Japan's top foreign investor, and that's what I was talking about, all of the plants that are going up all over the country. I said to Prime Minister Abe, please, we need auto plants, and I said that right at the beginning when I first met with him, and immediately liked him a lot, and they really produce. They're doing a lot of plants, not just auto. Many plants and factories are being built in the United States by Japan and Japanese companies. These agreements will ensure that our economic partnership flourishes brighter than ever before. I think we're probably at a stage with Japan where I don't think our relationship has ever been stronger or better than it is right now. In the months ahead, our teams will continue negotiations on remaining areas of interest to achieve a final and very comprehensive agreement. We're working on that right now. There's some big things that we're working on. And I'd like now to invite Ambassador Robert Lighthizer to provide further details on these historic deals. And I want to thank you very much. I want to thank everybody in the room for being here. And thank you very much to the media for being here, too. Thank you. Please, Robert.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for helping us get this agreement across the finish line, but more importantly, thank you for reorienting trade policy in the United States in the direction of Americans, workers, farmers, and ranchers. For too long, we have lost our way, quite frankly, and during the last almost 3 years, you've brought us back, and I'm very grateful for that, and I'm grateful to have been a part of it. I want to thank, if I can, a few people on my team. We had a huge group involved. Jeff Garish and Greg Dowd, two of my deputies, Michael Beeman, Sharon Bomer-Laritzin, and then there are lots of other people who gets a lot of credit for doing this. Let me just quickly make the point that the President has already made. This is a very big trade deal. This is about $55 billion worth of trade. With this, we'll have more than 95% of the GDP that would have been in TPP. So it's very important for farmers. It's also important for digital trade. Japan is the biggest market for the United States in beef, pork, wheat, and it's a substantial market in a variety of other things, including potatoes, which weren't mentioned, and a lot of the nuts and other products. It also affects wine and the like. So we think we'll have substantial additional sales as a result of this. So thank you again, Mr. President. It's a pleasure. It's an honor for me to be the person who gets to sign this. I would like now to turn it over to the podium over to Ambassador Sugiyama, who is not only the ambassador from Japan to the United States, but also was very active in actually getting this deal across the finish line. So thank you very much.
Well, frankly speaking, I must tell you that I feel really daunting and I feel very much tense. And then I couldn't feel more honored to be here in this signing ceremony place in the White House, Mr. President. In front of this top leadership, no ambassador couldn't feel as I just told you. Mr. President, Ambassador Lighthizer, and member of Congress, and member of cabinet, and governors, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. Actually, I couldn't forget the time when Mr. President and my Prime Minister Abe declared just about 1 month and 1 year and 1 month ago or something in the sideline of the UNGA last year to declare that we should sooner than later kick off a bilateral trade agreement. That was 13 months ago or something. And with some reasons, I think it took de facto basis only something like 6 months to wrap things up by Mr. President and my Prime Minister in New York on the 25th of last month to declare that politically it was all done. It was only remaining, legal scrabble, technical sort of things, and then my people and Bob Lighthizer people and your people and everybody spend 24 hours a day and night to finalize everything so that we are able to have today for the formal signing ceremony day to sign up the bilateral trade agreement, as well as Mr. President rightly mentioned, important thing is plus digital trade agreement, as well as other related attached document and something. Actually, I had to sign 16 or 18 places prior to this with my very beautiful mountain pen. Actually, Mr. President was kind enough to give me a really, really memorable pen to sign with his really good signatures. So to me, as Bob Lighthizer was kind enough to mention, that from the scratch I was in the team, and then Bob Lighthizer and my Minister Motegi and their team and our team seemed to be sometimes very much tense discussion or something, which is quite not abnormal. Because after all, this is a trade deal. But basically, based upon the fundamental friendship and trust relations between the two leaders, Mr. President and my Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and plus Ambassador Lighthizer and his opposite number, Minister Motegi, and us. So we have had really serious and fierce sometimes debates, which is really natural. But really, our whole sort of atmosphere was something to go to try to target the same target to gain for both of us a beneficial kind of outcome, which is something that I feel very much honored to sign this afternoon. So, and then as Mr. President and Lighthizer, Ambassador Lighthizer mentioned, we have, Mr. President, unfortunately, we are outnumbered by the people you have here, because you are here in the States. We are in Washington, but nonetheless, we have 3 gentlemen from Japan Commerce Association of Washington, D.C., Tetsuo Iguchi Toshiba Corporation, here they are, and then 2 Mitsubishi Corporation, Go Eguchi and Akihiko Nakazono. And these are the guys who are kind enough to join us. As I told you repeatedly, we are unfortunately slightly outnumbered, but they are kind enough to come over to see this signing ceremony because of the importance for the Japanese business and Japanese market and all Japan. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, everybody. Thank you.
You go ahead. I do want to pay compliments. So look at these 5 gentlemen right there, right there. That's central casting. They are very tough negotiators. Tough negotiators. Good. Congratulations. big one, and I'd like to just introduce, if I might, some of the folks here. As you know, Ambassador Garish and Dowd have been introduced, and great job, fellas. But Bruce Kettler, Director of the Indiana State Department of Agriculture. Eddie Settle, Commissioner and Chairman of the Wilkes County, North Carolina. And that's a lot of territory. That's great stuff. Where are you? Good. Congratulations. Tony Kurtz, State Representative, Vice Chair of the Wisconsin Assembly Committee on Agriculture. Good job, Tony. Go back and say you did it. You're going to be, you can run for anything, right? Barbara Glenn, National Association of State Department of Agriculture. Barbara, congratulations. Ben Scholes, National Association of Wheat Growers. That's a big deal, Ben. The wheat. They're ready. They're ready to buy it, I'll tell you. They're going to buy a lot of wheat. Jennifer Houston, National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Wait, I thought that was you. I could tell with that. Kevin Ross, National Corn Growers Association. Congratulations. Fantastic job. Randy Mooney, National Milk Producers Federation. Great job. Good, Randy. David Herring, National Pork Producers Council. And David, you are a very big beneficiary to things that are going on, but the pork is off the charts, the numbers, aren't they? Huh? It's going good.
This is wonderful news for our pork producers in this country. Japan has been our #1 value market for many years, and it's just great momentum, and it creates tremendous opportunity in rural America.
And China's a big buyer right now, right?
Pork's starting to move to China.
Yep, I know. They're going to be a very big buyer. It's already happened. Cody Carson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cody Carson, National Sorghum Producers. Where's Cody? Great, good job. Good job. You happy about this one? You said the right thing. I got to be careful. I know that. Yeah, it's great. This is going to be phenomenal. This. Julie Anna Potts, North American Meat Institute. Thank you. Thank you, Julie, very much. Darren Armstrong, U.S. Grains Council. Hi, Darren. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's great. Thank you very much. Hobie Bond, Virginia Poultry Federation. Hobie, thank you very much. Tom Nassif, Western Growers Association.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Good, thank you, Tom.
Delivering fresh produce.
You better believe it. Thank you. Congratulations. Say hello to everybody. Tom Stenzel, United Fresh Produce Association.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Tom, thank you very much. Saw you back there. Vince Peterson, U.S. Wheat Associates. Vince?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. It's going to be a lot of wheat. A lot of wheat going to Japan. And Fred Wacker, Montana Stock Growers Association.
Right.
Uh,
Mr. President.
fantastic. Thank you
so
very
very much.
Fantastic job you've all done. And again, my friend.
Mr. President, thank you.
Great job, Steve. Okay, so we've had a tremendous success. Likewise, we're having a lot of successes. We have tremendous success at the border. I want to thank Mexico for what they've been doing. You look at numbers, they're tumbling down. This is one on catch and release. Look at that. See that, fellas? Catch and, would you say that's pretty good? I'd say it's pretty good. I'd say it's pretty amazing, Steve. Even from your standpoint, Steve, fellas. That's some number, huh? Getting down to almost zero. Look. So it was not doing so good for a long time, catch and release. We had no help from the do-nothing Democrats. So we did it with Mexico, we did it with Guatemala, we did it with some countries that really stepped, El Salvador, Honduras, and other countries that are signing Safe Third agreements, which nobody thought would be even possible. And the border is really doing well. And again, Mexico today has 27,000 soldiers. 27,000. I want to thank the president of Mexico because he's been great. But the border is really looking good. The wall is moving rapidly. Large sections are being built every day. More contracts are being given out. We're doing it in about 17 different sections because it's over 450 miles long, the area we have to close up, and could even hit 500 at some point. And we expect to have anywhere between 400 and 500 built hopefully by the end of next year. It's going up very rapidly. It's a very powerful wall. It's got everything you can have. It was the Border Patrol just left, actually. We were going over some of the numbers, and we gave them every single element of the wall that they wanted. We had mountain climbers come in to climb. Do you believe this? We had different samples put up, and we had mountain climbers literally come in, which is the hardest one to climb. The panel, the steel panel on top, makes it very difficult. It's called an anti-climb paddle. I never thought I'd be doing this for a living. We built an anti-climb panel. Without the panel, they get across it easy. With the panel, it's not so easy. So anti-climb panel at the top. And the border's coming along well. The economy is doing great. We're doing, as I said before, we're the hottest economy in the world. We're the largest economy in the world. We're up $15 trillion at least since the election. 15 trillion, and China's down probably 22 or 24 trillion. So I think China might have caught us. If my opponent had gotten in by now, they would have caught us. And now it's going to be a long time before they catch us, if they ever catch us. I don't think anybody's going to catch us. If we're smart, nobody will catch us. So with that being said, if you have any questions on the trade deal, please, anything on the trade deal specifically? Yeah, please.
Any predictions about China? Do you expect a whole new offer? Any optimism?
Well, they want to make a deal. They're down 3.5 million jobs since we started doing what we do. And their supply chain is really cracked and broken, and they want to make a deal. Now, they're coming to see us on Thursday and Friday. We think there's a chance that we could do something very substantial, Bob. I think you think that. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, we're taking in billions and billions of dollars of tariffs every month. And we've never had this. We never took in 10 cents from China. Now we're taking in billions of dollars and tens of billions a year. And on October 15th, as you know, it goes up to 35. It goes to 35. It's going to raise fairly substantially. We could always do it a lot more, but we've decided not to. So that's the story. And I think that they are coming to make a deal. We'll see whether or not a deal can be made, but it's got to be a fair deal. Look, we've lost $500 billion a year for many, many years on average. If you include intellectual property theft and all of the other things that took place, it's incredible that past administrations could have allowed it to happen. We're talking about $500 billion, not million. That's a lot too. $500 billion a year for many years taken out of our country. We rebuilt China. They did a great job, and I don't blame them. I told President Xi, I don't blame you one bit. I blame the people that ran this country to allow that to happen, and they understand that. But we don't let that happen anymore. So we'll see what happens. We're going to have a very important meeting, and they have their top people coming in, and I have my top people doing the job. And if I don't think they're doing a good job, I'll fire them, and I'll go over and take their place. Okay? Yeah, please.
Are the Hong Kong protests linked, in your view, to the China trade negotiations in any way?
Well, we'd like to see a very humane solution to that. I hope that's going to happen. And, you know, Hong Kong is very important as a world hub, not just for China, but for the world. And you have great people over there. I see they're flying the American flags. They even have signs, make China great again, make Hong Kong great again. I'm saying, get those signs. But they have, you know, tremendous signage and tremendous, they have a tremendous spirit for our country. A lot of American flags, a lot of Trump signs. I'd just like to see a humane deal be worked out. And I think President Xi has the ability to do it. I've sort of said that I think if he met, he's a very convincing man, and I think if he met with some of the leaders, that could be one problem. You don't seem to have a specific leader of the group, but I really think they can do something. We just want to see a humane solution.
Did you tell Xi Jinping in any way that you would be quiet about the Hong Kong protests during the course of these negotiations?
No, I didn't, but I do say that we are negotiating. If anything happened bad, I think that would be a very bad thing for the negotiation. I think politically it would be very tough, maybe for us and maybe for some others and maybe for him. But no, I think that they have to do that in a peaceful manner. It's Now, I will say the first time I saw it, if you look a number of months ago, I saw 2 million people. I've never seen anything like it. We talk about crowd size. That was serious crowd size, right? The crowd size is much smaller now, so maybe that's saying something. But hopefully they can work out something that's amicable. Yes, sir.
Mr. President, would you accept a partial trade deal with China? There's been talk today about whether or not it could be headed in that direction.
Well, it's a very good question. I think it's not what we prefer at all. They are starting to buy a lot of our agricultural products. You see that? They're coming in very strong, on pork also, very, very strong, and in particular, but on other products so I don't know if you call that a partial. We don't have an agreement. My inclination is to get a big deal. We've come this far. We're doing well. Again, the fact that they've done what they've done with their currency, the devaluation, it really has not increased prices. Now we're talking China. It doesn't mean that in all cases that happens. Other countries' prices increase, but in the case of China, that hasn't happened. And they put a lot of money into their goods. They want to keep their people working. I understand that very well. But I think that we just have to see what happens. I would much prefer a big deal, and I think that's what we're shooting for. Can something happen? I guess maybe. Who knows? But I think it's probably unlikely. Okay?
Mr. President, on Syria, on withdrawing forces from Syria, why are you siding with an authoritarian leader and not our Kurdish allies?
Well, I'm not siding with anybody. We've been in Syria for many years. You know, Syria was supposed to be a short-term hit, just a very short-term hit, and we were supposed to be in and out. That was many, many years ago, and we only have 50 people in that area. That's a small sector, and I don't want those 50 people hurt or killed or anything. I don't want anything bad to happen to our people, and I told that to President Erdogan. I said, don't hurt any of our people get hurt, big trouble. Now, a couple of things. I think there's a lot of pressure on Turkey. They've been fighting with the PKK for many years. They're natural enemies. Have you read today a couple of reports saying that when President Obama started this whole thing, as you know, it was started by President Obama, he created a natural war with Turkey and their longtime enemy, PKK, and they're still there, and they're still hating each other beyond anybody's belief. But I have told Turkey that if they do anything outside of what we would think is humane, to use the word a second time, we talk about Hong Kong, we talk about this, they could suffer the wrath of an extremely decimated economy. And I've done it once. I did it with Pastor Brunson. You remember the Pastor Brunson? And they wouldn't give Pastor Brunson back, and they ended up giving Pastor Brunson back pretty quickly. Their currency fell at record levels, and lots of other things happened. And it was good. I have a very good relationship with President Erdogan. I want to see it happen. I will tell you this, though. We defeated ISIS. And when we were at 96 and 95 and 97%, I sort of said, let the other countries in the area finish it off. And I was met with a lot of anger from some people in our country. I said, all right, I'll finish it off. And I got together with our generals. I flew to Iraq. I got together, and we did it very quickly, far quicker than any general from here told us we could do it. We had some great people over there. They did it quickly. And I said to the European countries, you got to take your ISIS. You know, we have 60,000, maybe even 70,000 people. That includes families, that includes wives of fighters that were killed. We have many fighters that were killed in the battles. And we took it over. 100% of the caliphate I took over quickly. Nobody else was. It was a mess when I came to office, and I think most of you would agree to that. It was a real mess. I took it over, but then I said, what are we going to do with these 60 to 70,000 people that are being held and being guarded, and we can't release them, and many fighters also? And I said, I want them to go back to Germany, to France, to different European countries from where they came. And I said to the European countries, I said to all of them, take the people back. And they said, no, we don't want to do it. We don't want them back. I said, well, they came from Germany or they came from France, take them back. And they're so used to the United States being a sucker, being a fool. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars. You're talking about life. You're talking about so many things, so many elements. and elements of complexity, because they're going to walk back into Germany. They're going to go back into these countries from where they came. So I said, take them back. And they said, no. And then I said again, I'm going to give you another 30 days. Take them back. And they kept saying no. Maybe they won't be saying no now. I don't know. So I told President Erdogan, it's going to be your responsibility. Now, really, who's responsible? It's really Russia, it's Turkey, it's Iran, it's Iraq, and it's Syria, and anybody else in the neighborhood. Okay, we call it the neighborhood. It's not a friendly neighborhood. But these countries should do it. Now, ISIS is the sworn enemy of all these countries. Many of them they hate far more than they hate us. And those countries hate them at the same level as we do. They're terrible, terrible, savage killers. I said, take them back. But these countries are rich in most cases. They're powerful. They've got armies. They can do the work. But we're not bringing 50, 60, 70, or even 10,000 people to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. We're not going to be paying them for the next 50 years or paying to take care of them for the next 50 years. So we told Europe, we did a great service to the world, and we did a great service to Europe in particular, where so many of these fighters came from. We said take them back, and unfortunately, like NATO, they take advantage. NATO, as you know, I got the Secretary General, Stolheim, said, and I think very loudly, Secretary General of NATO said that because of what I did, they have paid over $100 billion more money toward NATO defense. But that's still not enough, okay? It's still not enough, not fair, because the United States pays far too much relative, and obviously NATO affects them more. But like NATO, like trade with the European Union, which is a very tough group to trade with, very, very tough group, almost as tough as Japan, not quite. But they're a very tough group to trade with. They take advantage. And I said, look, you take them back. We're not going to do this. We're not going to put them in Guantanamo Bay and put them all over our prisons. So right now we're at a position where if Turkey does anything out of what they should be doing, we will hit them so hard in the economy. But when you talk about soldiers, we only had 50 soldiers in the area. I think the area it's a very small area, and very small area, but we only had 50 soldiers there. I don't want them to be in a bad or compromising position. And I will tell you this, everybody respects our country again. If we want to go in, if we have to go back for any reason, because bad things happen, but we're 7,000 miles away. These ISIS people, whatever you want to call them, these people are right there. They're right there. They're touching many of these countries that I just named. Iran, as an example, hates ISIS, and ISIS hates Iran. Iraq, you know all about that. Turkey, Syria, let them take care of it. Let them take care of it. We want to bring our troops back home. It's been many, many years. It's been decades in many cases. We want to bring our troops back home. And I got elected on that. If you go back and look at our speeches, I would say we want to bring our troops back home from these endless wars. And we're like a police force over there. We're policing. We're not fighting, we're policing. We're not a police force. We're the greatest military force ever assembled because of what I've done over the last 3 years with $2.5 trillion, Mr. Ambassador, we've spent on our military. $2.5 trillion. But we're not going to be there longer. And we're going to be watching Turkey, and we hope that them and all of the other countries, or some of the other countries, including the European Union, goes in and does whatever they're supposed to do with these captured ISIS fighters and families. Okay?
A number of Republicans, including Nikki Haley and Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, were very critical of this decision today. Mitch McConnell put out a statement saying he wished you would exercise leadership and reconsider, and suggested not doing so would be reminiscent of what the Obama administration would do. Would you respond to them, sir? And also,
Yeah.
did you
Sure.
consult with the Joint Chiefs of Staff when you made the decision?
Sure. I consulted with everybody. I always consult with everybody. If you remember, about 8 months ago, I talked about doing this, and we kept 2,000 people there and then slowly brought them out. But once we captured ISIS, I don't want to stay there for the next 40 years. not going to do anything. The end game is going to be the same. I have great respect for all of the people that you named, and they have their opinion, and a lot of people do. And I could also name many more than you just named of people that totally are supportive. You see the names coming out. People are extremely thrilled because they say it's time to bring our people back home. We're not a police force. They're policing the area. We're not a police force. The UK was very thrilled at this decision. As you know, they're over there. They have soldiers over there also, and others. But many people agree with it very strongly, and I understand both sides of it. I fully understand both sides of it. But I campaigned on the fact that I was going to bring our soldiers home and bring them home as rapidly as possible. We, all together, we defeated and took over 100% of the ISIS caliphate. Everybody said that was going to be an impossible thing to do. I did it, and I did it quickly because we have a great military now. When I took over our military, we didn't have ammunition. I was told by a top general, maybe the top of them all, "Sir, I'm sorry, sir, we don't have ammunition." I said, "I'll never let another president have that happen to him or her." We didn't have ammunition. Now we've captured ISIS. We've done what we've done. We had 50 soldiers in the area you're talking about. And I said, we want to bring our soldiers back home. It's been a long time. Again, we were supposed to be in there for just a tiny spot, like a 30 to 90-day period. That was many years ago. It's time.
The Kurds themselves have lost thousands of fighters in
That's
battle.
true. And we've lost a
Can you
lot of fighters,
guarantee
too.
Their safety?
Well, we're going to try. If you look at some of the Kurds, as you know, that's a natural enemy of Turkey. Specifically, as I said, I mean, they have natural enemies. They've been fighting each other for, somebody said today, hundreds of years. I mean, one historian said they've been fighting for hundreds of years. We interject ourselves into wars, and we interject ourselves into tribal wars and revolutions and all these things that are very, they're not the kind of thing that you settle the way we'd like to see it settled. It just doesn't work that way. But hopefully that'll all be very strong and strongly done. We're spending tremendous amounts of money. I can tell you the two countries that are most disappointed that we're leaving are China and Russia, because they love that we're bogged down and just watching and spending tremendous amounts of money instead of continuing to build our forces. We have tremendous new weapons under development now. We have weapons that nobody can even believe. We're going to be making some stops over the next 4 or 5 weeks. Some we show, some we don't show. But we've rebuilt our nuclear. We've renovated and rebuilt nuclear. We're building submarines, the likes of which they've never been even thought of before. The genius of them, hopefully, and hope to God we never have to use them. But we are doing what we have to do. But we've been there for many years, many years beyond what we were supposed to be. Not fighting, just there. And it's time to come back home. But I can understand the other side of it. But if you go by the other side, that means we should never, ever come home. We should never, ever come home. And, you know, I have to sign letters often to parents of young soldiers that were killed. And it's the hardest thing I have to do in this job. I hate it. Afghanistan, I signed one the other day, Iraq, Syria. They get blown up by mines. They get taken out by a sniper. And I have to write letters to people. And we make each letter different. Each person is different. And we make them personal, but no matter what you do, it's devastating. The parents will never be the same. The families will never be the same. People are killed. Many people are still being killed. It's going to go on that way for perhaps a long time. And we're willing to do what we have to do, but there has to be an end game. And if you stay, it's going to be the same thing. Eventually, you're going to have to leave. It's going to be the same thing. So I think what we're doing is the right thing. A lot of people agree with me. And again, you go back and see my speeches. A big part of my speech, and always when I won what some people consider to be a surprise election, now I just see a poll that just came out where I'm up massively with independent voters. I don't know if it's this or because of the hoax, you know, that's going on with Nancy Pelosi and her her friend Adam Schiff. He's another beauty. He got caught lying all over the place. He doesn't know what to do. He's a mess. Right now he's a mess, and everybody knows it. Just all you have to do is a little good reporting. You'll see he's a total mess because he got caught. But, you know, we have to do the right thing for our country, whatever it may be, and I just think that's the right thing. I respect both opinions. The problem with the other opinion is, when do we leave? When do we leave? We're going to stay there forever? Yeah, Jeff?
Mr. President, the White House counsel's office is preparing a letter
Yeah.
to Speaker Pelosi about the impeachment inquiry. What do you hope to achieve with that?
Well, first of all, the impeachment inquiry is a scam. The conversation that I had with the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, was a very good it was a very cordial, very good conversation. The mistake they made, the opponents, the opposition, the Democrats, the radical left, deep state, whatever you want to call them, they came out with a whistleblower report before they saw the conversation. Had they waited one day, Nancy Pelosi wouldn't have made a fool out of herself, and she would have been able to say what I said, because when she saw it, she said, this is not what the whistleblower said. I had a very, very congenial, nice conversation with a man that I like, and he ran on corruption. Because, as you know, Ukraine is known as a very corrupt country, one of the most in the world, shockingly, because I know Ukrainian people. It's surprising to me, but it's known as one of the most corrupt countries. And under the past leadership, it was having a lot of difficulty. This gentleman, the current president, the new president, ran on the basis of anti-corruption. As you know, I think it was his single biggest thing. And we had a great conversation, but it wasn't reported that way. The only reason I would have released a letter, because I think it's terrible to have to release a letter that you have with the leader of a country. I think that's a terrible precedent. But the whistleblower report, or whatever the news was so off. It was so horrible. I said, I never said that. I said, let me see it. We have a stenographer report. We have a very, very word-for-word report of what I said. I released it. And almost everybody that read it said it's either perfect or really very good. But it's a very normal, nice conversation. And when you see that the president of Ukraine, President Zelensky, said, there was no pressure put on me whatsoever. His spokesman came out 2 days ago, said there was absolutely no pressure put on the president. I didn't tell him to say that. There was no pressure put on. All you have to do is read the report. The problem is I released it a day after they had already made their big statements. And again, it's a big scam. And I think Adam Schiff should be investigated for what he did. He took to the great chamber, Congress, and he made a speech. And his speech was a fraud. Everything he said was a fraud. He went out as though I wrote it. He defrauded the American people. He defrauded Congress. He defrauded himself and his family. He made a speech with a horrible speech. I said, what is this? What's going on here? I think he's having some kind of a breakdown, because he got up and made a speech that bore no relationship to what the conversation was. And I'll tell you, a lot of people heard that speech, and a lot of people thought that's what I said because they heard his speech, because they're not going to read a 3 or 4 page conversation. They don't have access to it. But I thought it was I thought it was a terrible thing, where he's going up, speaking as the President of the United States, saying things that I never said. And the meaning was horrible, and the whole thought was horrible. And then the whistleblower, he did, through his committee, through himself, he met with a whistleblower. They never said that. They never talked about it. And Nancy Pelosi knew all of this stuff. I mean, she's as guilty as he is, because she knew all that. She knew everything about it, and she didn't do anything about it. And I'll tell you what, they should really be looked at very strongly, because what they did is unthinkable. What they did to this country is unthinkable. And it's lucky that I'm the president, because I guess, I don't know what, a lot of people said very few people could handle it. I sort of thrive on it. You know why? Because it's so important that we get to the bottom. We went through the whole Mueller scam, 2.5 years. We went through that, and I had 3-4 days where it was like over. And then I'm walking into the United Nations, and they released it as I'm walking in, Mr. Ambassador. I'm walking in. I'm going to meet with, I won't name, but one of the top leaders of the world. And I see up on the screen, and people start screaming about this scam called impeachment. You can't impeach a president for doing a great job. You can't impeach a president for having the lowest and best unemployment numbers that we've had in 51 years. You can't impeach a president for tax cuts and regulation cuts and creating, and even the ambassador would say, the strongest economy in the world. We have the strongest economy in the world. This is a scam, and the people are wise to it. And that's why my polls went up. I think they said 17 points in the last 2 or 3 days. I've never had that one. I've never had that one. So I think it's very sad for our country. I think it makes it harder to do my job. But I do my job, and I do it better than anybody's done it for the first 2.5 years based on results. I mean, you look at not only the unemployment numbers, look at the employment numbers, Jeff. We're up to almost 160 million people are working. And now today we signed the deal with Japan, which is such an honor. And you have a great country, a great, great country. And to have you partake in our agricultural product and digital is a real honor for me. So thank you very much for coming all this distance and to be here. And I look forward to seeing you for many years to come. Please, again, wish Prime Minister Abe a happy birthday. He's a very special man. Thank you. Thank you very much. Start by saying I just spoke with Boris Johnson, and we had a good talk about a number of subjects, and we'll maybe talk about it a little bit later.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here today to discuss CBP's Southwest Border Enforcement statistics for September. But before I get to the numbers, I'd like to say thank you to the men and women of the Customs and Border Protection for their tireless efforts through fiscal year 2019 dealing with this unprecedented crisis. They do a phenomenal job securing our nation's borders, enforcing our nation's laws, saving lives, and maintaining the integrity of our system and rule of law, and doing so with humanity and compassion. Make no mistake, this country is safer because of their efforts, their sacrifices, and their dedication. This past Sunday, we lost another Border Patrol agent, Robert Houghton, in the line of duty while he was patrolling in the Tucson sector. He marks the 129th Border Patrol agent who has died in the line of duty. He leaves behind a wife and a son. His dedication, his life to public service, to protecting this great nation, I can promise you this, he will be missed but never forgotten. Now, as we've been expressing for some time now, this past fiscal year, CBP has faced unprecedented and staggering levels of illegal crossings. While the comprehensive numbers will be forthcoming with respect to all the numbers and all the statistics for 2019, CBP's enforcement actions on our southwest border totaled nearly 1 million in fiscal year 2019. This is a staggering 88% higher than the number of enforcement actions in 2018, 88% higher. These numbers are numbers that no immigration system in the world is designed to handle, including ours. Arrivals from families to the border in fiscal year 2019 more than tripled any previous fiscal year on record. Our Border Patrol facilities, we've talked about this, were not designed to hold families or children. They were designed as police stations. And because of that, because of the new demographic of families and children, those resources became strained, and our limited resources had to be diverted from their law enforcement duties securing the border to address the humanitarian crisis. Make no mistake, our country was less safe because of it. And what continued to drive and pull Central American families to our borders was the public knowledge that the United States immigration laws are filled with loopholes, often judicially created. The hundreds of thousands of families and children were told, coached, and made to believe if you make it to the United States border with a child, it was your passport into the interior United States. The cartels, smuggling organizations, on an almost daily basis would broadcast that they could guarantee their entry. All you had to do was pay. All while they exploited our laws and the migrants themselves. The cartels, the smuggling organizations abused them and treated them with nothing more than as a commodity. This is what we wanted to stop. We have therefore prioritized developing strategies and introducing initiatives within the current legal framework that ensured results, restored the rule of law, and closed the loopholes that undermine the integrity of our immigration system. And this administration's strategies have brought about results, dramatic results. While Congress has failed to put forth a single piece of legislation, even be able to introduce it to the floor to address this crisis, we have addressed this crisis. This September marked the lowest number of law enforcement actions during fiscal year 2019. The total number of law enforcement actions last month was just over 52,000, down almost 65% from the peak in May of 144,000. This represents the fourth month in a row of a steady decline in apprehensions. This is an unprecedented achievement. Last month, it was another decline of 18% from August to September, and this marked the fourth consecutive month that the United States Border Patrol alone averaged 25% lower in the last 4 months. And why have we achieved these significant results? Make no mistake as well, President Trump has worked to have other countries in the regions like Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries to join us as true partners, to come together to address this as a regional crisis that it is. And that's exactly what is happening. Initiatives implemented under this administration, like the Migrant Protection Protocol, or MPP, which was established in accordance with Section 235 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, have brought about the downward trend in border enforcement statistics and strengthened the integrity of the immigration system. In close partnership with the government of Mexico, MPP allows for migrants illegally crossing or at the POEs without documents to be returned to Mexico to await expedited immigration proceedings in the United States. If they have meritorious claims, they receive relief in just a few months rather than waiting in limbo in the United States, sometimes for years. And if they have unsuccessful claims, they are swiftly returned to their home country, or they can return voluntarily. Through our partnership with Mexico, CBP has enrolled more than 51,000 people in MPP. And Mexico, again, being true partners, has agreed to provide humanitarian protections and even work authorizations to these individuals for the duration of their stay. With MPP, migrants are receiving due process and protection while the United States is restoring integrity to our immigration system. We're closing the loopholes and diminishing the smuggling organization's ability to profit on the back of these migrants while simultaneously exploiting our system. Through this and other initiatives, CBP is continuing to collaborate with our foreign partners, particularly Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, to address this as a regional crisis, as I said, specifically targeting gangs, human smuggling organizations, and the movement of illicit drugs. And while the Northern Triangle countries are stepping up to address the regional crisis, expanding their asylum capabilities, and expediting the return of citizens who do not qualify for asylum in the United States, Mexico's efforts are leading the way. Mexico's continued support of MPP and enhanced border security efforts along their southern border, in the interior, and along the U.S.-Mexico border is something really for the history books. The partnership between Mexico and the United States concerning this regional crisis is having a dramatic impact. The administration, we continue to enact a network of policies and regulations and initiatives, all within the current legal framework. Unfortunately, as we discussed before, judicial activism by lower courts continuously enjoins these attempts to address the crisis. The asylum IFR, for example, that requires migrants in the United States along the southwest border to seek asylum in a third country, is governed by current law, yet it was enjoined by a lower court, and it took the Supreme Court just recently to overrule that lower court. And I'm here to tell you today, we are instituting that asylum IFR this week. The Flores regulation is another example, which allows DHS to enforce immigration laws passed by Congress to detain families with dignity and respect during the duration of the immigration proceedings. It's actually part of the Flores settlement agreement, the law. But what happened when we tried to introduce that regulation? It was also stopped. So despite these obstacles and Congress's inaction, the administration efforts, they're working. I'll give you an example. Just 4 short months ago, our daily apprehensions were close to 5,000. And today, I just looked at it on my screen before I left my office, it's below 1,700. We went from over 19,000 people in custody just 4 short months ago to less than 4,000. We have essentially ended catch and release. If you come to our borders now with a child, it's no longer an immediate passport into the interior of the United States. Instead, they will be afforded a lawful and expedited process, but they will not be released into the interior United States, never to be heard from again. While this demonstrates an incredible effort, especially by the men and women of CBP, there is more to do. 1,700 daily apprehensions, as I mentioned, is still unacceptable. The former Secretary of DHS, Jay Johnson, he's been said several times that when he was Secretary, a bad day was 1,000 apprehensions. I agree with him 100%. And let's keep in mind, although we apprehended almost a million individuals this year, fiscal year 19, we estimate, and this is a conservative estimate, that there's probably around 150,000 individuals who eluded apprehension. That's nearly 13,000 each month. The bottom line, we still need Congress to pass meaningful legislation to address our broken legal framework when it comes to immigration. And while Congress has failed to bring a single piece of meaningful legislation to the floor, this president, this administration is doing exactly what he promised the American people. Now let me move on to something else, the wall. Having served as chief of the Border Patrol in 2016, I proudly support the need and importance of the wall. CBP, with the help of the United States Army Corps of Engineers, is continuing to provide the men and women of CBP what they have asked for to do the job of protecting this great nation on the front lines. To date, a total of 71 miles of new wall has already been constructed. And it's not just a wall, it's a wall system, integrating lighting, technology, and access roads. This wall system is essential to our nation's border security by replacing outdated and dilapidated designs and construction of a much-needed physical barrier in strategic locations as requested by the leaders in the field. This isn't what the president asked for. This is what the experts asked for, to help them do their job to safeguard and protect this great nation. The president has simply listened to them, and he's delivering his promise. By the end of 2020, CBP expects to have approximately 450 miles of new border wall system constructed. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, walls work. Our agents know it, and the data shows it. Everywhere we have installed borders along the southwest border, agents gain more operational control, illegal drug and human smuggling activity declines, agent safety improves, and border communities are safer and more secure on both sides of the border. And the wall just doesn't benefit border communities. By the way of illustration, in a 5-day enforcement action that ended last Wednesday, the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested 97 illegal aliens in 6 Midwest states. That's important, including those with prior criminal histories, convictions for serious crimes, assault, battery, child exploitation, sexual assault, drug possession, hit and run, and weapons offenses. And again, this was in 6 states in the Midwest. This underscores the reality that some of the illegal aliens who cross at the southwest border make their way into the nation's interior and commit serious crimes. If we're going to have a rational and intellectually and honest debate over this issue, we must acknowledge the public safety issues imposed by some, not all, but some illegal aliens. The wall serves to impede and increase our ability to apprehend criminal illegal aliens before they make it into the interior United States. That is the truth. The wall also increases our ability to stem the flow of illicit narcotics into our country. Last year, we lost 68,000 people to drug overdoses. The year before that, we lost 70,000 people due to drug overdoses. And last year, CBP seized more than 910,000 kilograms of illicit narcotics. 910,000. As an example, the majority of heroin comes from our southwest border, making its way to your town, your city, and your state. So this further illustrates what goes on at the border impacts every community. And the wall gives CBP the opportunity to more effectively detect and prevent drugs from entering our country and killing our citizens. That's why I always say every town, every city, every state is a border town, border city, and border state. Now let me close by pointing out a couple other additional accomplishments of CBP agents and officers. Every day they answer the call, putting their lives on the line to protect this nation. And this just isn't a tagline. Over 30 years of law enforcement experience, this agency is something, and they do something that I've never seen before. In fiscal year 2019, United States Border Patrol agents rescued more than 4,900 people along the southwest border. Let that soak in a minute. They rescued 4,900 individuals along the southwest border. In the midst of this crisis, our agents rendered aid and in many cases put themselves in harm's way to rescue thousands of people whose lives or well-being at risk. When the agents see a migrant family struggling in a river, they've answered the call. When they locate people dying of thirst in the desert, they answer the call. When our agents and officers see somebody in need, they don't ask them questions about their citizenship or their migration status. They see a human being in need and they answer the call. And they've done so 4,900 times this year. These incredible stories play out just about every day along our border, and they deserve our attention. These stories, and these stories that the American people deserve to know through the news media. I think now we have time for a few questions. Thank you. So, yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Morgan, thank you so much. Our colleagues in Mexico say they are talking to migrants, doctors, shelter directors, who say MPP, in essence, the U.S. government is creating violent and dangerous situations that they are trying to escape from their home countries. What is your response to that, and what are you doing to address this violence?
So Mexico is doing a very similar activities that we are doing here. So here, our system was overwhelmed. I think everybody understands that. Again, back in May, 144,000. We relied on NGOs and faith-based organizations. That's one example that the government of Mexico is doing. The same similar process that we did. So they're relying on NGOs and faith-based organizations to help them with the individuals that are going over there, including MPP. In addition to that, the UN is there actively in the northern border of Mexico, helping them address and deal with the individuals that are enrolled in MPP. The International Organization for Migration, for example, is actually there assisting through the UN and assisting the government of Mexico. They're actually providing free service for people that are enrolled in MPP to actually return to their home country if they feel unsafe or they're just getting tired to wait, because the majority of them know they're economic migrants and they're not going to qualify for asylum. And now that the message is getting out that we are, through this administration efforts, we're closing those loopholes. And so now the message is finally getting out. We're trying to overcome the message that the cartels have been putting out there that it's going to be a free ride into the United States. We're now sending the message that if you're coming here as an economic migrant, you're not going to be allowed in the United States. That's driving a lot of people to return.
In other words, the U.S.
Yes, sir.
The U.S. is not doing anything to
I
work
answer your
with
question.
Mexico.
Yes, sir.
You didn't, sir.
Yes, sir.
If I
Go
could,
ahead.
let me follow up actually on what she was asking you about. Is there operational and financial collaboration with the Mexicans? The president and you have also been very complimentary about what they're doing. So I'm just curious, what's the level of that involvement? And is what we're doing making a difference to try to keep those people safe as they try to make their journey to this country and or in Mexico?
Absolutely. We're dealing with the government of Mexico at high levels almost on a daily basis, and a local level, which really a lot of times that's where it happens. I just returned from RGV again, where I talked to our local leadership, and they expressed to me the great collaborative working relationship they have with the government of Mexico. For example, I'll give you an example. So MPP Times. We're working with the government of Mexico to make sure that their capacity to receive people is just that they have the capacity to receive them, so that they're not overwhelmed. We're talking about the times and the durations of when we're actually going to return them to Mexico, whether it's hours early in the morning or at night. We're working with them on a constant basis. Again, another important thing that we're working with them too is it's bigger than just MPP. So we're working with them to address the drug smuggling routes and the drug smuggling organization. We're working with them on a daily basis to help them improve their ability to actually conduct operations within Mexico to go after the cartels and the drug smuggling organizations and the gang members. And we're doing the same thing with the Northern Triangle countries. I think everybody here knows by now, all three Northern Triangle countries have signed agreements right now. And like I said in my opening remarks, we're working with those countries on a daily basis. I have personnel that are down in the Northern Triangle countries to help them improve their capacity, not just with their law enforcement activities, but also their asylum capabilities as well.
That's a lot of money in terms of paying for Mexico's participation and providing security along the border. Are we as Americans helping to pay for that?
I think what we're doing is we're being good, true partners as they are in dealing with this as a regional crisis. We all have responsibilities as part of this. They're helping us. So think about this. They've got 25,000 troops that are now dedicated to this. They've an enormous amount of troops to their southern border, interior enforcement, and at their U.S.-Mexico border. Every law enforcement action that they take, that helps our country. Right now, they've almost doubled their southern border apprehensions. That helps this country. The fact that they've received 50,000 individuals through MPP, that's a great cost and expense to them. They're helping us, and we help them. So, yes, sir.
Thank you. While you're up here, I wanted to ask you about a number of incidents over the past year of CBP agents harassing journalists on their way into the country from overseas assignments. Can you say right now that that conduct is unacceptable, and can you say what you're doing about it to stop this from happening?
So a couple of things. First of all, unequivocally, let me say that any journalist, right, that is stopped and harassed, treated improperly because they're a journalist is absolutely unacceptable, unequivocally. And so what we do, and I read a recent article about that, and when that happens, a couple of things can happen. If you feel that you have been inappropriately handled, harassed, then you need to report that immediately, right? And there's a couple different avenues. You can report it directly to CBP, our Office of Professional Responsibility, DHSIG, and I encourage you to do that. If you feel that you've been inappropriately harassed, you need to do that. We proactively, if we see something in an article, even if it hasn't been reported, we're going to report it to our Office of Professional Responsibility. Because here's one thing we can say. We can disagree all we want, right? I learned from Lieutenant General Lear a long time ago, disrespect doesn't mean disagreement, right? And there's a little thing in the country called freedom of speech. So anything that we do that would impede that, we are going to hold people accountable. It's unacceptable, 100%. So, yes, ma'am.
A couple questions. One, do you know how many kids are currently being held at the border of that 4,000 number you cited?
So I don't know that specifically, but we can get you those numbers. We keep track of that.
And just to follow up more broadly, the Northern Triangle countries, Mexico, what is the administration doing to address the root causes of the problem? The violence, the poverty. I hear you talking about troops and the reinforcements that have been sent in, but is the U.S. actually sending in resources that can help stem the flow of those core issues?
So I think that's spot on. That's a great question, because we can address the loopholes in our system, those pull factors, all we want. But until we also help those countries address the push factors, we're only going to be half there. So we are. And again, a couple examples. Right now, besides the agreements that have been signed by all three countries, and again, look, that's not just about the asylum part of that. Those agreements really go to the heart of addressing this as true partners as a regional crisis, to do just what you hit. You were spot on, to increase their capacity, right, to go after the smuggling organizations, to increase their capacity to go after the gang members, to stop that violence. So that's one thing that we're absolutely helping. Another thing we're trying to do is help build their capacity, their asylum capacity as well. So we're doing those type of things every single day with those Northern Triangle countries to help them build, because at the end of the day, look, Border Patrol agents will tell you, they've talked to these individuals. They want to stay in their home country, right? I mean, that's their home. And look, I've talked to all three ministers of security for the Northern Triangle countries, and they've said to me, it wasn't just to me, to a group of U.S. officials, they said, you know, America, please change your laws, fix your loopholes, because you're taking our kids, for example. They said, you're taking our vitality, you're taking the youth of our country. We want our kids back. Fix your laws. Work with us, and we'll work with you to stem the flow of our children leaving our country. So we recognize that, and we are trying to help them. So, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Given the decline that you've mentioned in border apprehensions that you've seen over the course of the past few months, and also the cooperation that you've mentioned that you're receiving from Mexico, is a safe third country agreement with Mexico even necessary?
So I can tell you right now, what the dialogues that we're having with Mexico is, what they're doing right now is incredible. We're going to continue to have dialogues to continue to improve anywhere that we can between our partnership, and again, to really look at this as a regional crisis. But right now, we're just focusing on the incredible effort that's going on right now. They are, Mexico, absolutely, again, and I mean this, this really is, the cooperation and partnership we have with Mexico right now really is one for the history books. It really is.
Mexico's foreign minister says that such an agreement is not necessary because of the numbers that you've also cited. Do you disagree with the foreign minister?
No, I don't. Right now, the cooperation, I mean, it's a good question. Right now, the cooperation that we are receiving with Mexico right now, it is exactly where we need it to be. I'll give you an example. Just last week was the first time OTMs other than Mexicans, this is the first time that the government of Mexico actually apprehended more OTMs than the Border Patrol did. The first time since we started keeping those stats. That, I think, illustrates the incredible work that they're doing. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Commissioner Morgan. In talking about how long Mexico can sustain this, you very complimentary about what they're doing right now, but the last time you were here, you were very skeptical about how long they could keep this up. So feasibly, how long can they keep this level of productivity in helping the U.S. with the border crisis?
So I think, honestly, as a law enforcement individual for a long time, I think part of what makes us okay at our jobs is that we always maintain a healthy degree of skepticism. But I can tell you, 30 days is a long time in this crisis. What Mexico has shown me is they're sustaining this. Their capacity is growing. On all those fronts, their interior enforcement, their enforcement of the southern border, as well as their continued expansion of MPP and the support of that. Having said that, what I feel though is even though they're being incredible partners, for a durable, lasting solution, we cannot rely on other countries to fix the loopholes in our system. They're being great partners, but at the end of the day, it's our responsibility. It's Congress's responsibility. As this administration, this president is coming up with these new initiatives and regs and policies, and even though judicial activism is trying to enjoin those and put up obstacles, at the end of the day, Congress's failure to act is the issue. So to have a durable, meaningful solution with respect to this crisis, Congress has got to get off the bench, work on a bipartisan matter to pass meaningful legislation to address this crisis. I've said that, and I'm going to keep saying that. So, yes, sir.
You were very effusive in your praise of the Border Patrolmen on the ground, and when I went to the border this spring, they were thankful for that, but thought it was a bit hollow because they say their pay scale and their overtime pay policy is hampering their efforts. They would like to see a change in the overtime pay policy. They would like to see greater numbers, more boots on the ground, and they hold you responsible for that. Could you address that issue? And then if the numbers are down, why do you need a wall if they're saying they need more people?
So what I would say is, first and foremost, I'm absolutely responsible, first and foremost, and I take on that responsibility. It's something that we always struggle. I think every federal agency is always struggling with pay reform, overtime, more personnel. I don't think you're going to meet a chief of police or sheriff or agency head in federal agency that will ever say that we're okay, we don't need more people. So we do need more people. We're constantly looking at innovative ways to increase pay, whether it's overtime or retention bonuses, to keep the talented workforce we have. It's a continuing struggle. It's something I'm dedicated to, absolutely. And as far as the number of people, what I would say is the wall, again, I say it's a wall system as part of a multi-layered strategy. So you need the infrastructure, the technology, the infrastructure of the wall, along with technology and personnel. What happens is if you apply all three of those in the right way and the strategic location, it'll actually reduce the number of personnel that you need in that area so we can focus them to the more strategic locations. So it's a balance of both of that. So with every mile of wall that goes up, it increases our capability to do their job.
Will you commit to greater pay or at least clearing up the disparity between Customs and ICE and Border Patrolmen? Because when I was down there, that was their number one issue. They like the job that they're doing, but they want you guys to at least give them equal pay, that they're not getting paid equally to ICE and Customs.
So first of all, I hear the same thing, but first and foremost, you know what I hear first and foremost? What makes me proud to be a part of this and be standing next to them is they are proud to represent this country. They are proud to be on the front lines safeguarding our nation's borders. That's what they're proud of. And as the agency head, I should try to do everything I can to make sure that they're being paid and taken care of adequately. So I commit to that. Yes, absolutely, I commit to that. So, yes, ma'am.
Sorry, about the CBP agents that are doing credible fear screenings. Could you give us sort of an update on how many are doing it, at what ports of entry, what is the goal of the number as you scale up, and when you would like to have it scaled up?
So there's a few things to unpack there. So what we have done, and again, this is to augment USCIS asylum officers, because I think everybody knows here there's just not enough asylum officers. So what we've actually done is trained a handful. I don't have the exact numbers to date now. I can get those for you, but we're continuing that program, and we're going to continue to expand that program to support USCIS. And right now, it's being successful. We've been able to, as part of our expedited process that we're doing, the temporary hearing facilities that are down there, those agents are helping as well to facilitate that expedited process. The program is working well. I'm taking a hard look at expanding that program because, again, USCIS plays an integral role in this process through the asylum officers, so that's kind of a bottleneck. If we don't have that capacity there, it's going to limit our ability to effectively expedite the process. So yes, sir.
Is there a target number that you can reach to say that the surge, essentially, of people coming across the border is over And also, how are you counting those people who are stopped under remain in Mexico?
So those are really, really good questions. I've thought about that a lot. I a couple times I've said, hey, I'd like to have the apprehensions under 500 a day. That's just me kind of throwing something out there at a manageable level, looking at what the historic lows are. I mean, at the end of the day, standing here as the commissioner of CBP, I'd like the number to be 0, but that's not realistic. So I think, again, Jay Johnson, I'll bring that up again, he said 1,000 was a bad day. So, if we could start getting that down to the 500 range, don't hold me to that. That's just a little bit of, unscientific, guesstimation that I'm putting out there. But, that becomes manageable. I think what's also important, though, and the reason why I hesitate to say, hold fast on a specific number like 500 is the demographic these days are very different. So if it was 500 Mexican adult males, that's very different for us. But when you're talking about their families and unaccompanied kids, that brings on a whole new dynamic, and that's one of the challenges for us. So 500 Mexican adult males is different than, 350 families and kids and 150 Mexican adult males. That challenges us. And so with that, we're going to be taking a look at that. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question?
It's just essentially, are you going to count asylees who remain in Mexico as apprehended, U.S. asylees? How are you counting?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And so we had a little glitch early on how we were doing that. So when we first apprehend somebody, that will be counted as an initial apprehension. But once they're enrolled in MPP and they go back to Mexico and then they have to come back and forth for their court hearings, we're not recounting them. But their initial apprehension, we are counting that as an apprehension. So.
Can I ask a follow-up to the question that Brian just asked about the need for retention bonus?
Sure.
Last week, the Pew Research Center put out a study that said that the agency you briefly ran this summer, ICE, is viewed less favorably in the country than the IRS, less favorably than any other agency that they asked about. Is the need for a retention bonus or overtime pay evidence of a recruitment problem at the Border Patrol? Are you having a difficult time finding talented people as a result of the administration's policies and the way that they're viewed by the general public?
Okay, so I'll try to address that because I look at it very differently. So I don't know who those people are that view ICE in a negative light. As a law enforcement officer, I don't. I consider the men and women of ICE heroes, unequivocally. They are enforcing the laws enacted by Congress. And I read an example of just last week, 97 arrests, 6 states in the Midwest with people serious crimes, assault, battery, sexual assault that went on. So the men and women of ICE, this is part of the false narrative out there. They're doing this every day. Make no mistake, in my heart, and I believe 100% as a career law enforcement, dedicated my life to this country, that's what the men and women of ICE are doing. So if someone doesn't understand that, then get with me, read, get up to speed on what ICE actually does, and they will not have that perspective. So to answer the second part of the question, retention bonus, I think right now there is a narrative out there negative about law enforcement out there that I think is a false narrative. I think when you have our own elected leaders that are out there trashing the men and women of law enforcement, actively trashing, saying lies, saying something like a Border Patrol agent is forcing a migrant to drink from toilet water, which is a lie. That is what's the narrative out there. When you talk about the morale of the men and women in Border Patrol, for example, we're asking them to do all kinds of stuff they were never trained to do. We're asking them to take care of kids, order baby diapers, a baby formula. Their morale isn't impacted by that. You know what their morale is impacted? When we have a congressional leader, an elected leader that's out there vilifying the men and women of law enforcement, saying lies, pushing that false narrative that we know is not true. Instead, what they have done nothing. Congress has not passed one meaningful legislation to address this crisis, but yet they'll attack the men and women that are right now enforcing the laws that they did enact. That's the challenge. That's what I think impacts hiring and retention. But to answer your question, and pay is another issue. That's a bigger governmental issue that we have to. I'm competing with other federal agencies, but I'm committed to continue to compete.
But I mean, that's why you have trouble getting recruits, is because
no,
of pay?
I don't think it's that simple of an issue. I think it's a complicated issue. I think morale is part of that. I think the vitriol that's out there is part of that. I think parents are talking to young men and women very different than they did before about a career in law enforcement. I think it's a bigger issue, more complicated. I'm being told one more question. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Commissioner,
clarification and then a question. You say 71 new miles of border wall have been built. Do you mean border wall in areas where there was no previous wall or barrier? Okay, just to clarify.
Right.
And then why only 71 miles? Obviously, this is a big political issue for the president. He brings it up as he is campaigning for re-election. Do you feel political pressure from the administration to significantly increase that number ahead of next November?
So let me answer the latter first. I feel absolutely no pressure from this administration to build more miles of wall. What I do feel pressure from is the men and women of the Customs and Border Protection, because they need this wall. They need the wall to do their job effectively, to safeguard and protect this country and themselves. That's where the pressure comes from me, to make sure I'm giving them all the tools and resources they need to effectively do their job and do it safely. Now, for the 71 miles of new wall, make no mistake, if you take a 4-foot high, X-cross steel, vehicle barrier, and you replace it with a wall system that's 30 foot high, has an anti-climb plate to it, has lighting, technology, and access roads, makes no mistake, from an agent out in the field perspective, a leadership perspective, and my perspective, that's absolutely a new wall. Now, if you want to differentiate between a new wall where it replaced those dilapidated, unacceptable physical barriers and new linear miles, I think that's the correct way to talk about that. So right now, those 71 miles have not been new linear miles, but that's part of what's being processed right now. So in shortly, we're going to begin construction like an RGV. RGV, strategic location, right now, 40 to 60% of the apprehensions throughout this fiscal year, and we're getting ready to build a little over 100 miles of new linear border wall down there. And I tell you, this isn't easy. If you talk to General Semonite, who's leading the charge of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, it's a tough process. You have to obtain the land. Land acquisition is a tough thing. Sometimes you'll go and maybe you only have a couple of miles of linear wall, and you've got 600 landowners that you have to deal with. You have some public land, some federal land. It's a difficult process to do. But I tell you what, 71 miles of new wall systems have been built is more than what was built in the previous administration. So it's being built in RGV in a strategic location. So, yes, sir. I guess it's the last one.
Yeah. You're talking about the new linear wall and the 71 miles. How is Mexico going to pay for that?
Look, to me, I'm a law enforcement guy. I'm the commissioner of CBP. I'm not. That's a political thing to me. Well, let me answer your question. That's a political thing to me. To me, I don't care who's paying for the wall. All I care about is it's being built, and it is being built. And by the end of 2020, we're going to have 450 miles of beautiful new wall that's going to absolutely exponentially increase the border patrol to safeguard your towns and your cities and your state.
Ask Mexico to pay for the wall.
Thank you.